Alright, for returning subscribers, welcome back. It's been a while since I've made a video. I've been out of town for a while, went to a wedding, did a whole bunch of things, but I'm finally back now in the garage and doing some more work, and in this case, pretty heavy job here. For those who aren't subscribed, new to my channel, check it out. I've got a few videos of this truck, but this is going to be the most complicated diagnosing and repair type video I've done with this truck here. This is a 1999 Ford Ranger, and it had a misfire between idle speeds up to about 2,000 RPM, whether it was in gear or not, and it was low on power. And I want to show you what I did to find out what was causing this misfire, despite there being no check engine light, no codes, no way to figure this out other than just hardcore mechanical diagnosing. And that's coming up right now. So this 1999 Ford Ranger only has 65,000 miles on it. That's it, 65,000. It's an older truck, but hardly any miles. And a friend of mine just bought this not too long ago. If you're a returning subscriber, you'll remember that I put headlights on this thing, cruise control buttons on it. He recently called me and said, hey, I've got the truck's shaking. There's no check engine light, but the truck is shaking like crazy. When I start it up, give it some gas and accelerate hard, it drives perfectly fine. So I thought, okay, maybe we got an ignition issue or something, or a fuel issue or whatnot it might be. So of course I did some research on the Ford forums. I looked around a little bit, tried to figure out what could be going on with this truck. I didn't find very many answers, and that's one of the reasons I want to post this video, is so that others who may be having the same problem can figure out what's going on with their truck. As you can see, I've got the intake out here, and there's a cylinder head over here sitting on my table that I'll show you in just a little bit. But let me show you what I found here, and I'll give you a step-by-step procedure of how this went. So one of the first things that I did to figure out what was going on with this engine was a clear flood crank. And what that is you hold the accelerator pedal to the floor on the truck and you crank it. What that'll do is that'll disable the fuel injectors, and you can crank the engine, but it won't start. And when I cranked it, here's what it sounded like. So as you can tell, we got a dead cylinder in there somewhere. Something's not right, because you can hear the engine's kind of pop, 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 pop. So one of the cylinders doesn't have compression. We don't know exactly where, but that's what I got to figure out here. So I used a compression gauge and I tested every cylinder on the truck. So I did the compression test, and one of the cylinders was at 0 psi. All the others had 143, 135, 141, 148, and 150. Unfortunately, when you get into an engine that has no compression, it's usually a pretty complicated fix. There's nothing super quick and easy you can do to fix this. It has to be taken apart. Now, if you're like me and you have some GM experience, you're in luck, because this 3-liter V6 engine is very similar to the 3.1s and the 3.4s in the Chevrolet Impalas and the Equinoxes, is where a lot of those were found. The intake manifold design is very similar, pushrod engine, super easy to take apart. It only took me a couple hours to get the cylinder head off of the passenger side of the engine. So let me show you what I found here. So I finally got the passenger side cylinder head off. Thought at first there might be a problem here. If you look, bring the camera over here. If you look down in this cylinder here, the front one on the passenger bank, you can see where the exhaust valve was contacting the piston there slightly. But it didn't look like it damaged the cylinder wall at all, and the piston itself doesn't even look damaged. In fact, there's actually markings on this piston as well, not nearly as indented as that one is, but similar markings. I didn't see any issues with the engine block. Everything looked good. Nothing that I could catch my fingernail on. Everything felt really smooth. So no problems there. However, the real problem became evident when I took the cylinder head off and laid it on the table here. Back when I worked at a Chevrolet dealer, I found this trick, and I call it a trick. I'm sure a lot of mechanics actually do this. But I found out this way to see if you have leaking valves. I had a Chevrolet HHR that had this problem. It was misfiring at idle. Now, granted, the leak wasn't near as fast as this one is, but it had the same problem, and I'm going to show you what I did to find this. So here's a can of brake clean. I just took the little fill port off.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set I've got the cylinder head set up here on a couple 2x4s to level it out so it's not pushing on the valves and not opening them at all. And I'm going to go ahead and fill the tops of these cylinder heads with brake clean and see if they leak. So here's the far back one on the passenger side bank. As you can see, no leaks. Here's the middle one. Once again, no leaks. Now here's the front one where our misfire was. And as you can see, it drains right out through the exhaust valve there and comes out the back of the cylinder head here on the exhaust port. So our problem is the exhaust valve. I kind of figured that was the problem based on some forum research and other sources that I looked into. But it makes perfect sense that that's what's causing our problem. I'm still surprised that the check engine light still did not come on and no codes were set, so it made it a little difficult initially to figure out what was going on. But after the compression test and especially removing the cylinder head here and this little brake clean test here, it became evident right away what was going on. So I'm probably going to pull off the other cylinder head as well and just have both of them redone here while I'm at it. Now, while this is not the recommended way to remove a valve from a cylinder head, it worked for me. I took a 1/2-inch oxygen sensor socket, a little extension, put it in my press here, pushed down on the valve spring, and then used a rubber mallet to tap the valve back up. And as you can see, now I've got the keepers there out from the valve itself that I can pull out with a magnet. So I'll get a magnet here and remove these keepers. Here's one of them. And here's the other one. These are the valve keepers. They keep the valve in place, hence the term valve keeper. Now we'll release the press here. The spring will fully extend and we'll be able to take the valve out of the cylinder head. So here is the valve spring. So after removing the exhaust valve, here's what I was able to find. It appears we had something fail in the valve guide and the valve started to get off track a little bit. And I say that because if you look at the exhaust valve here, you can see this area of the valve where there's a little indent where the valve hasn't been seating properly. That's where all the brake clean was leaking from, that extra shiny tip right here on the valve. That's where our leak was. And that's why I wasn't holding compression.
So here's a valve that's causing our problem. As you can see, take a little close look there, you can see some scarring on the valve stem there. So I know something for sure is going wrong inside the cylinder head here. Now, I personally don't service cylinder heads myself just because I don't have all the equipment needed to remove the valves and put all the new seals in and everything. I just send this out to a machine shop and I have them clean it, inspect it, clean the threads out. I'll have them put new valves in it, new guides, seals, everything. They just do the whole shebang, and then all I do is put the cylinder head back on. I'm also going to recommend to the owner of this truck to do both cylinder heads while we're at it, because this is fairly labor intensive. But I'm going to send these cylinder head or heads, depending on what the owner wants to do, off to the shop, get them inspected, cleaned, tested, make sure everything's good, do all the new valves, guides, and seals. Then we're going to put this truck back together. I'll document that in the next video here, and we'll get this truck back on the road hopefully.